Joining us now is our good friend and dual threat analyst of college football and basketball, Blaine Fowler, national champion quarterback, Uncle B, as we like to call him sometimes. Blaine, welcome back to Studio B.
What's up, guys? Isn't this great I get to come in every week?
Yes.
We do love that you moved down here.
And I want you to know that I was running a little behind because I looked in the mirror as I was walking out the door. I had a red, but it wasn't red. It was Stanford Cardinal red. It wasn't crimson.
It was Cardinal. That's a color.
And for a minute, I thought, well, this is okay. This is Stanford Cardinal red. And I went,
Not today.
No.
Not
with what's on everybody's mind. So I went back into my closet, found a gray shirt. Gray's pretty neutral. We don't play anybody gray, do we?
No. Nope, not that I know of.
So I changed to gray.
Really?
Then the shoes didn't match. So then I had to go gray shoes. I don't know if had to go gray shoes.
Come from the bowling alley?
I mean, this whole thought
shoes
process
are
cost
awesome.
me a good 10 minutes this morning in my preparation.
All for BYU.
Yeah, because I just didn't want to misrepresent what we were all
for the greater
all
good.
about.
All for
right?
Brigham.
So with that in mind, what does the BYU-Utah rivalry mean to you on a day like today and just in your life in general?
You know what? When I came to BYU, I came from New York. I didn't know anything about the rivalry. Didn't know anything about it. Didn't matter to me. It took me about 2 weeks to figure out how important it was to the fans here. And it became important to me because as a player, you're playing for the fans. You play for yourself, but you play for the fans. That's what it's all about. That's why we have college athletics. And the longer I've been here, and and I've covered this rivalry for a lot of years on both sides of it. I do a radio show for a youth's flagship station that I've done for years and years and years during football season. And I've got relationships. The head coach at Utah is my old roommate from college. So I hear from both sides of it on a regular basis. And to think that it's only BYU fans that love this rivalry is crazy. The Utah fans are just as passionate. And to me, you keep playing it. The game is bigger than who the coaches are at that time or who the players are. Players come and go. Coaches come and go. And the fans are always here, and they have been for decades and decades and decades. You just play the thing. The game's bigger than you are. Larry?
The man.
And I only say that because I didn't know until the last couple of days that he paid the buyout of this game out of his own check.
Interesting.
What?
Hashtag Pac-12 money.
Yeah, what? That tells you who was driving it, though, right?
Yeah. Certainly.
But I'm glad they came to their senses and realized that for the fans, that this game needs to be played.
So in the end, Utah football decided they were going to take 2 years off. That only ended up being one because of the bowl game, one season, if you will. Men's basketball ends up only taking 1 year off in the end. When the dust settles, does men's basketball feel differently than football in that regard? Or because football, the argument from Utah was, maybe it'll be good for the rivalry. Maybe it'll calm some people down.
And
then they said the safety thing.
Sometimes it's all about positioning and communication on how things are received by both fan bases. And with football, it was, gosh, we're going into a new league. It's hard to schedule because the league's requiring us to do this many games. So even people on the BYU side were going, okay, we get it. Logistically, that's tough. You should still play. You should still figure it out. And then they figured it out. So I think everybody's okay with the football side of things. Even though would like to have seen it played, I think everybody's going, okay, we get the rationale. They're trying to figure things out. In basketball, because the message came out that it was for safety reasons, so that just makes it a little more hotly debated issue. It's like, really? Come on. Like, I've done how many of these games? Sat courtside at the university, courtside at BYU, for way more games than Kristoviak's ever been involved in between Utah and BYU. And I have never once even had safety cross my mind in any of those games. Once. When Jimmer had made that half-court shot, and he dropped 30-something on Utah in the first half, and I was doing that game, the national game for NBC that week. And at the end of the game, a bunch of BYU fans were there, came down and mobbed. We were interviewing Jimmer. I was fearing for my safety and Jimmer's safety that the BYU fans were going to get a little too rambunctious. That's the only time I've ever even thought about safety in this thing. So the rationale was poor. And because of that, it's a more hotly argued and questioned move. And so I'm just, you know what? In the end, let's put it behind us. They're going to play the thing. And for Utah, it's a shame they're not playing this year, because I think Utah's best chance in the next 4 years to beat BYU again would be this next year when a lot of new guys are coming in. Even though they're wildly talented, there will be an adjustment period if they played it early. That'd be a good chance. You get to 2017, BYU should have the talent edge in a big, big way moving forward.
Joining us now in Studio B is Blaine Fowler, dual threat analyst for college basketball and college football, talking specifically about the BYU-Utah rivalry renewed on the basketball side. And I want to dive some more into the psychology of what it is that makes this matchup between BYU and Utah go and what makes it so special, because we're seeing a myriad of opinions come across, like people that really say that the games, whether basketball or football, make or break the season for their team. I don't really get that level of desperation, because it's not for a conference championship now and it's one regular season game. But why do you feel like some fans base it on that game?
It is about fans. I don't think the players base it on that game, and I don't think the coaches base it on that game. I think coaches are smart enough and players are smart enough to look at a season in its entirety and go, okay, what's our target in terms of goals for wins this year and all of that? And that's just one game. It's the biggest game on the schedule. If you don't acknowledge that, you don't play with enough passion in it. It's the biggest game, but it still is a game. If you say BYU lost to Utah next year and won 9 or 10 games, still be an unbelievably successful season with that schedule.
My point exactly.
Next, right? So you wouldn't go, oh, the season was lost.
But here's the thing. I presented a poll question a few weeks ago saying, would you rather take a 2-1 start with wins against Arizona and UCLA and a loss to Utah, or a win against Utah and losses to Arizona and UCLA? And it wasn't close. Fans, for the most part, said, I think it was like 70 or 80% a win over Utah and 2 losses to Arizona and UCLA.
That's because they were, and the proximity of this rivalry, not just geographically, but everybody in their workplace has Utah and BYU fans. And so they intermingle all the time, and they're passionate. Both fan bases are really, really passionate. That's what makes this thing great. So you have to hear about it. So they're thinking from that perspective. Hey, there's family. I know lots of friends that have families that half the family are Utes and half the family are Cougars. And they argue this, and they dress up in their red and their blue when those games are on. And so you can never get away from it. And because you can never get away from it, it has more importance. But from the team's perspective, I think they'd take a 2-1 start rather than a 1-2 start, even if that one losses to Utah. I think they would.
Logic.
Yeah, it's personal for a lot of people. You're exactly right. My stepdad is a Utah fan. I don't like watching the BYU Utah game with him, especially recently. You know what I'm saying? And then a guy that lives in my neighborhood played football for Ball State. He's from Wisconsin. He's a Wisconsin guy. He said that he works like in Sugar House or something. And when baseball lost 2 weeks ago, 8-1 or whatever, to Utah, he said, everyone attacked me because I'm from Utah County. I don't have anything to do with BYU. And I said, BYU won 2 of 3 this year. He's like, you should have told me that earlier. I could have used that against them.
The rivalry is always better when it's really competitive. When games come down to the wire, when there's a balance in who's – and I think
you don't give up 35 in
right,
the first quarter.
I think that balance – and here's the thing. I think that balance is swinging back. Hey, I remember – and this is – I hate to go, hey, when I was here, because that's so long ago now. Holy cow, that's long ago. But Utah – I realized how important it was to the fans, but I have to tell you, our approach going into those games – we weren't as intense going into the Utah game as we were into the Utah State game, because Utah State had challenged us in recent years, and Utah was down. And then Ronnie Mack gets in there and turns that thing around. So very shortly thereafter, when Utah became competitive, now the rivalry came back. And I love the way Ron and Lavelle handled the rivalry, because they always remain good friends. In fact, I'm interacting with the both of them right now. They have a golf tournament they're putting together for Utes and Cougars to come together, because he and Ronnie and Lavelle are still really, really good friends. Those guys were great for the rivalry. They brought the rivalry to the forefront, but they made it you're playing against your brother, and who do you want to beat more than your brother? Like, you want to beat your brother, but then you want to give him a hug afterwards and say that was a great game. That's the way I wish the rivalry was.
Sure.
But for the fans, it's not that way. They want to beat the heck out of each other after the game.
There's some legit hatred there.
Okay, I'd like to get your take on just the fact that South Point, and we've been talking about win projections for BYU football all season long. South Point predicting 8 wins for BYU football this season, which is on the higher end of things that we have seen. I've seen
a lot of 6 and 6 and 7 and 5.
I say 7 is a success.
Yeah.
Bowl eligibility.
8 wins. Okay, what's your prediction for this BYU football team, wins and losses in 2016?
Okay, let me give you. Okay, based on the schedule, here's 6 wins. You ready for this?
Okay.
So
November. Plus.
Arizona. I'm giving them Arizona.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Toledo.
Yes.
Cincinnati.
Yes.
Southern Utah. UMass, and Utah State.
November plus.
I'm giving them
Arizona
6.
and Toledo.
Okay? Now, let me give you 7. Utah.
Oh, there it is.
And game 2. And so now that means that they have to find one. To get to 8, they've got to find one win. I'm predicting now, this is early, BYU's going to win the Utah State Championship next year, which is important.
They're going to beat
right?
the Aggies
The
and the Utes.
Beehive boot, Blaine.
So that means they've got to get a win against Rosen and UCLA or West Virginia, not really on the road, but on the road. Michigan State, they got to replace Connor Cook, but they're loaded again this year. They're predicted to be this is a rebuild year for them, and everybody's putting them in the top 12. Michigan State.
That's worse
Michigan
than the
State,
Final
right?
Four.
Hey,
right?
real rebuild year. They're probably only going to be like 12th, 11th, 10th this year, right? And then they got the Mississippi State or a Boise State. Boise State's got all that offense coming back. 9 out of 11 starters on a team that produced over 600 yards in the Poinsettia Bowl on offense. So Arizona's got some defensive question marks. They got Nick Wilson at running back and Anu Solomon coming back. He was so injured last year, we don't even know how good he is. But BYU has an advantage in that game because Arizona doesn't know what they're going to do. That's why I'm giving them that one. It's like BYU can scout Arizona's personnel and their schemes. Arizona can scout BYU's personnel, but they have no idea how Taysom Hill operates in this new offense. They have no idea what defense they're going to run.
Neither do we.
So give them Arizona. right. Give them the Arizona game because of that. The only reason I say to Utah is if I was to rank Utah's top 8 players and start with most value number 1 down through, if we count it out through through position 40, they lose like 6 of their top 8. And so to me, I'm like, okay, this is a rebuild year for Utah. This is an opportunity for BYU. And then after that, then it becomes a great rivalry again. I think it's a really important game. I think Kalani will treat it as such. And Kalani has an advantage in that game because he knows the personnel and he knows the schemes intimately. The upperclassmen that are starting, he recruited. He knows the schemes really, really well. So he's got an advantage in that game, and Utah have one game of film. So that's why I'm giving them those first 2. Then they hit UCLA, who's wildly talented. We'll see. We'll see on that. So I feel like they have 7. They win the Utah State Championship, and if they do nothing but that, I'm going to go, wow, unbelievable first season for these guys.
Good season.
Yes.
All things considered.
Then if they get one more of that group that I said, I don't know
Holy
about.
cow.
Now it's 8 wins. That's fantastic. And if they get to 9, we start talking about, whoa, is this a special season? And so that's kind of how I look at it. What do you guys think? Is that?
Yeah, Jerem said 7. I said I'll be happy if BYU's bowl eligible just because of the transition. It's
First-year
hard
coaching
to make
staff,
so many changes in transition, and it's just tough to win a lot.
Because they're learning a lot of new things. The other thing is, and I've talked about this for a long time, like for a year now, up front is where BYU is going to make marked change in the next couple of years. Here's what I want everybody to look for. When you look at the 2 deep on the offensive line and there's not somebody that's starting backing up another position, then BYU's back to the depth they need to play. So you need to have a right guard and a backup right guard. Not a right guard, and if that guy gets hurt, the left tackle moves over to right guard, and then you put somebody in at left tackle.
Valid points.
When you get to the point where all 5 positions have a valid backup that's almost as good as the starter, so that you can push the starter and say, hey, this guy's as good as you are, he's just younger. That's why he's watching you right now. But if you don't raise your level of play, he's going to step in and play. When you get to that point, and every position has a backup, so you are 10 deep, now you compete with this kind of schedule. So when we see that, I'm going to go, okay, now BYU's where we want them to be. That may not be till 2017 or 18, We'll
Great
see.
stuff, man. BYU Utah, the rivalry explained out of the mind and mouth of the gray shirt wearing Blaine Fowler.
Elmira, New York,
the
Blaine Fowler.
neutral man. Hey, Blaine, we always appreciate the time.
Thanks, guys.
Let's do it again soon.